Hello, friends. Come in. Come in. Have you ever had that feeling that something was shifting inside of you? Well, if you are feeling that, I'm here to tell you that you are already on a path towards self discovery. My name is Miss Carol. I am a former career teacher, now here with you, sharing everything that I've learned over my healing journey about self awareness, radical self acceptance, self love, so that we can cultivate more meaningful relationships. For a long time, I felt this restlessness. I was journaling habitually. I would give myself nonsensical hobbies. I remember I would drive literally 2 hours in any direction, north, east, south, west, looking for a thrift store where I could find like any kind of treasure, all of these things that I was attempting to keep myself busy when in actuality, what was actually happening, what was causing this restlessness within me, was that I had already begun to awaken to my deeper consciousness. I had already started the work of clearing out the mental and emotional space that was required to become my best self. But I was just completely unaware of it. So in this video, I want to talk about 6 less than obvious clues that you are already on the path to self-discovery and it is too late. Okay, so unfortunately, what happens is we ignore these subtle signs because they are quiet. They are not like a big lightning bolt. Despite us wanting to have this huge epiphany, life just doesn't work that way. Life is more about the accumulation of a momentum of decisions that we make, one after the other. And, that's a great thing because I kind of like to compare it to, would you like to eat every single meal that you're ever going to eat for the rest of your life today? Would you want that to happen? No, you'd feel sick to your stomach. You'd throw up. But that is the equivalent of when we attempt to rush this process, and it starts with a kind of feeling that you have some kind of dissatisfaction. Maybe you start to ask yourself questions like, what does my life really mean? Why am I really here? What's happening? And that kind of daily curiosity is a big clue that you are on the way to deepening your consciousness, to uncovering your most and best realized self. So don't dismiss it as aimless wandering because it is not. You are searching for the deepest connection and alignment with your soul. And friends, these indicators are small. They are quiet. They are subtle. And it is up to us to raise our awareness, to deepen our awareness to such a point where we don't dismiss these subtleties and we really give them reverence and give them the focus that they require. So let's begin. Let's start talking about these 6 signs that let you know you are on the path to self-discovery. The first one is intentional reflection. So I will give you a huge clue, which is so obvious that you're here. So I built this channel for people who are seekers, people who are seeking the ultimate destination, which is that inner peace. We want to be the safe space, no matter where we are, no matter what environment we find ourselves in, no matter what people are in our midst, we feel comfortable in the peace that exists within us. So if you are here watching this video, that is intentional, that is on purpose. You are already doing the work. It's not enough to simply recognize and be aware of what your emotional triggers are. You have to attempt to question why. Why is this feeling coming up in me? What is it attempting to communicate with me? And when you start to, again, have that daily curiosity, this is a big yet subtle sign that you are on a path of self-discovery. Journaling, this is why I love, love, love journaling, is because it's such a practical tool that we can all do that requires however much time we are willing to dedicate to it. And even though I love pen to paper, that's how I have always journaled. Have started to incorporate video journaling as well, and it's such a great tool because you can look at it and, first of all, get all of this clutter out of your mind and release it. And secondly, more importantly, it allows you the opportunity to look back and reflect. What was I going through in 2016? Man, I was really stressed. I was really anxious. And then you might be able to go further into that investigation and start to mind map. Mind mapping is a wonderful tool that you can incorporate in your journaling, which simply means you put in whatever emotion that you are feeling in the center, and you literally create prongs that are coming out of the emotion, such as anxiety. What was I going through? Who was I around? Start to examine all of these decisions and circumstances that you find your life in, and they will be very, very big clues and maybe less than obvious clues that you are on a path to self-discovery. So the second sign is that you are consciously discomfort. What does that mean? You are putting yourself in situations where you feel awkward or uncomfortable. The great thing about knowledge is that the more that you quote unquote know, the more that you actually don't know. We have to be just as confident as about the things that we know as the things that we don't know. So, I found out maybe about, I don't know, a decade ago that my mom never learned how to ride a bike. And that kind of like blew my mind because I just assumed that all kids learned how to ride a bike. It just deepened my understanding of who she was and, the circumstances in what she grew up in. I often found myself, and here's a caveat. Discomfort and uncomfortable are not necessarily the same thing. So I, for a long time, would find myself in uncomfortable circumstances that I would place myself in because I was attempting to fit into whatever crowd. And a lot of this existed when I lived in LA. I had this idea of what a quote unquote cool person was supposed to be and who they were supposed to hang out with and what kind of parties they were supposed to, attend. And meanwhile, I literally would be in the back of whatever club or party I was at, in my book, reading my book, because I was just like, I'm so uncomfortable. So discomfort, knowing what you don't know and putting yourself in circumstances that will help you to grow in a more enlightened and awakened version of yourself. Humility is frustrating. It really is, because it is a very tangible explanation of what you don't know. But there's a power in that. There is nobody on this planet, or nobody that has ever been on this planet, I am 1,000% sure, that number one, knew everything, or number two, try to know everything. There are just certain things that you are just not going to know and understand, but you are expanding your consciousness. You are expanding the limits of your boundaries, the expectations that you put on yourself. And this is a wonderful, less than obvious clue that you are going and already on a path of self-discovery. Number three, your priorities are shifting. You are starting to question your values. You are switching from perception to perspective, because here's the big thing, right? We have two things that are very limited in our life: time and energy. When you start to question, okay, who and what am I putting my time into? What am I giving my attention to? What am I giving my energy to? And then you make adjustments based on that. When I was living in LA again, I really would find myself in these situations around these people who were just, not of the same in step with me. They just, and it wasn't any slight against them. We just had different ways of looking at how the success and what we wanted out of life. And it took me a long time, and I put myself in very uncomfortable situations time after time for this to really, really sink in. The great thing about our values is they change over time. The values that I had when I was in my 20s are not the same values that I have today. So your values are going to evolve and going to shift as you evolve, as you shift. So shifting your priorities, that's a great thing. You might This is all about, excuse me, I'm reading off my notebook. This is all about, not punishing yourself for being quote unquote antisocial. This is about you being aware and being focused on the attention that you are going to have to pay to the internal work so that you can have whatever desires you aim to have on the external world. Right? So it's healthy relationships versus people who talk about it. That's number 2. Number 3, or excuse me. Oh my gosh. I just confused myself. Shifting priorities. Oh my gosh. All right. Number 4, excuse me. Emotional literacy. We are so familiar with this term, emotional intelligence, right? So it's going from the awareness of our feelings to the knowledge of why. And it's about accepting our feelings without judgment, but being curious about them. Why am I feeling this way right now? What is this bringing up for me? Why? What is this rejection? What is this isolation? What is this, even on the opposite spectrum? What is this excitement? What is this teaching me about myself? I'm not just sad. I'm not just angry. I feel disrespected. I feel complacent. You have to begin to learn the language of your emotions. And all of our languages are different. But when you are consciously questioning and bringing these questions to the surface, you are moving your anatomy of, or your the language that you have for your emotions. You are deepening it, because the more specific you are in labeling your emotions, the easier that they're going to be to find the root of. So labeling an emotion as just simply sad or simply angry, that doesn't really tell you a whole lot. It kind of gives you an overview, but when you can label it, when you can call it exactly what it is, and furthermore, when you can say why, then you are creating the language of you. And everybody's language, just like everybody's fingerprint, is individual to them. So that was number 4. So you're either going to ride the wave of your emotions, or you're going to get swept over by them. And if anybody has ever been in the ocean, and as I'm speaking this, I am paying homage and reverence to Malcolm Jamal Warner, who just passed away. Unfortunately, God bless everything he brought to the world. But your emotions are like waves in the ocean. You are either going to interpret them as mysterious strangers, as mysterious messengers, or you're going to kind of look at them as like, who is this person that I don't know, and learn to develop that emotional intelligence, that emotional literacy, not just keeping things on a superficial level, but really, really going deep. So that was number 4. Number 5 is you are making intentional pattern interruptions, meaning you're beginning to be aware of when you are self-sabotaging yourself. And where does that start? That starts in our mind. That starts with our thoughts and our feelings. If you have a desire to create a specific type of life for yourself, but you have these habitual thoughts going on in your mind, the being aware that you are breaking the pattern of, I say this thing to myself when I am attempting to do this thing, why is that happening? And then being aware enough to just bring yourself back to alignment. No, I'm going this way. It's like a GPS, if you set your GPS to an address and you make a left turn instead of a right turn, it's going to tell you to please make a U-turn, please make a U-turn. But then it's just going to reroute you. It's just going to take you to the path that you were going, just in a different way. But it's your decision. Um, feelings need validation. They really do. If we are habitually on autopilot, meaning we are not aware of the patterns and habitual emotions that we have, it's like, again, we just get swept away with them. But the minute you label something, the minute you give something a name, you are calling it out, you are bringing it to the light, and you are saying, I see you. You are no longer this ghost that I am chasing around in circles, right? So this requires radical honesty, because unfortunately, we are infinitely unkind to ourselves. And when you are attempting to interrupt those patterns, those habitual patterns, it's going to require you to have some compassion and, kindness towards yourself, because we speak to ourselves in such a cruel way. But honesty is key, okay? It is proof that you are moving in the right direction. You are on a path of self-discovery. These little interruptions are huge victories. Your awareness of your thought patterns, that is a huge win. And it is a visceral demonstration that you are deciding to put yourself in the driver's seat of your life. So, interrupting your patterns, your habitual thought and feeling patterns. That's number 5. Number 6 is curating your circle, right? Curating your circle. So this means you start to look around you and say, okay, does this person really align with the life that I desire to have? Is this person really, bringing out the best in me? I had a friend from high school, and every time I would see this friend, he would bring up this story of like something that happened like 15 years prior. And like the last time I saw him, I literally had to look at him and say, I don't think about high school anymore. I just don't. It's not that I have any negativity towards it, or I don't have an affinity when I do think about it. But these kind of like things, I don't think about them anymore. And I really had to like set a boundary, and it makes it a little challenging to have these certain friendships remain in your life, because people really do stay stuck in whatever emotional or thought or conscious pattern. And this isn't about necessarily cutting people off. This is creating space for people who are actually more aligned with the goals that you set for yourself, the desires that you want. When you get around people, this is a wonderful practice to start to be aware of. When you get around people, do you feel more energized? Do you feel supported? Do you feel cheered on? What do those people make you feel when you're in their presence, and maybe more importantly, when you're not in their presence? Because when someone is truly aligned in your purpose, aligned with your purpose, and like giving you wind in your sails, so to speak, there's not going to be a whole lot of tension. There might be some questions, there might be some curiosity, but they are going to, in general, if they don't understand, they're going to accept it anyway and leave you be. So, curating your circle was number 6. As you are on this path, again, it is imperative that you be patient, you be kind, because friends, in order to have more, you need to be more. And that's just the truth. If you want to have more love, friendship, connection, whatever the thing is, you need to cultivate that more in you. That it always starts with you, you know. As you grow grateful and appreciative of your life, you will find yourself being drawn to certain things. Those things will be drawn towards you, and anything that doesn't align with that will naturally repel, you know. But this kind of patience, this kind of compassion, this kind of honesty that you're going to need, you know, you might again have to get some outside help for that. Get a therapist, get a coach. You know, I just created a 30-day journaling exercise specifically for this, because when we have emotional literacy, when we have emotional wherewithal, this is about creating safety, mental, emotional, spiritual safety, the safety that lives within us. That no matter where we find ourselves, we are at home. We are always at home. It is such a richer experience to be around people who can cheer you on, rather than in circumstances around people who are like leeches, and they leech all of your energy, and they leech, you know, the work that you had accumulated for yourself. You know, this is a process, and it is imperative that you fall in love with the process. This is a journey. There is no replacement for the work whatsoever. Every single, you know, epiphany that you have, every single time you are curious, these are your signs that you are on a path of self-discovery. These may not be practical, or excuse me, they might be practical, but when you are attempting to create your most authentic self, that is a journey. It really, really is. And then you kind of look up and you look around and you're like, wow, I'm actually living the life that I've always dreamed of, that I've always wanted. You're not lost. You're not restless. You're an explorer. You are navigating yourself. You are navigating the terrain of your mind. These patterns that we create, these stories that we tell ourselves year after year after year. I am proud of the work that you are doing. Thank you for showing up. Again, my name is Miss Carol. If you have any questions, if you want to connect with me, please reach out, comment, like, subscribe. Check out this next video, my friends. Be well, and I will see you next time.